Welcome to the Shattering Inequities podcast, where we uncover the bold, research-driven strategies that are transforming education for every student, especially those historically left behind. In each episode, we'll highlight leaders who are not just imagining a better future, but actively creating one. Through real-world successes, challenges, and actionable insights, this podcast is a space to crowdsource solutions that advance shattering inequities in education. And now, here's your host, Dr. Robin Avelar-La Salle.
Hello, and welcome to the Shattering Inequities podcast, where we believe that every student is entitled to a premium education, no matter where they go to school, where they live, or what their circumstance. The goal of this podcast is twofold. First, to inspire and inform by having guests who have actually done the work of changing the odds for kids who historically haven't reached the highest levels of the academic ladder. And secondly, the research goal, near and dear to my heart, is crowdsourcing information from these exceptional educators and community members and just advocates for education for all kids, and turn around in conjunction with the contributions of our audience and publish findings from all of these podcasts that we do together. And with that, I'd like to introduce two stellar educators, two people who have I've come to admire beyond admiration, and truth be told, by way of full transparency, love beyond love as well, as people as well as exceptional educators. So please help me welcome Omar Zuñiga and Lisa Ceja, who are two teachers, and teachers of other adults in the education ecosystem who really care about education and educating all students at the highest levels. Lisa and Omar, welcome to the Shattering Inequities podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Good to be here. Thank you for having us.
Oh, of course. Wouldn't think of it not having you on. So, Lisa and Omar, we talk so much about all the subject areas and achievement in general. And truth be told, what we want is all students to graduate from high school eligible and prepared for every life option, from going into the workforce with high wage, livable salary, all the way up through and across to university eligibility, to get in, which is one trick, and then to get out, which is another. And we talk about so many subjects, but the research clearly points to the bottleneck. And the bottleneck is mathematics. For historically under successful students, there are gaps by demographic group. It's mathematics that has been the bottleneck. And that's been your life, what you've dedicated your professional lives to. Can you share with us what is going on with that?
Lisa, do you want to take at it, or do you want me to?
Go ahead, and then I'll jump in.
And well, actually, I think for me, that's been one of the biggest motivators in my career and in education in general, just to want to change that. And so I think realizing there was a point in college, as I was majoring in math, I didn't realize, I think, that I was the only brown person in the room until I actually I went to this summer math research program, and I pointed out all of these inequities that exist in education and in the sciences and mathematics. And when I got back, I remembered looking around. I was like, oh my God, I am the only one in all of my undergraduate math courses at UC Riverside. And then I remember one day I looked over and I saw another, brown guy, and I was like, we made eye contact, and it was like love at first sight. We're like, come on me. And we together, we struggled a lot, but I think that we had to create such a bond to help us get through and succeed, because it was extremely difficult. But that's one of the things that I realized. I was like, there's not a lot of people like us. in the math and the sciences. And so that's been one of my biggest motivators. And then that's when little by little I started to realize there's so many inequities, and especially in mathematics as a gatekeeper, for high school graduation and beyond, predicting, college success and graduation of colleges with a college degree. And so that's been such a driving force, I think, in what we do, and wanting kids to succeed and to make it and to get over that hump. And so I know Lisa and I, both being high school math teachers at one point, like that was one of our big tasks, and that we were so excited to get kids through, and to help them get to wherever they wanted to get to.
Mm-hmm. Very similar experiences in my case. One thing I realized is that when I tell people like what I do, hey, I'm a high school math teacher, they're like, oh, no, I've never been good at math. And so this thinking is it continues through generations. And so students even tell me, it's okay, miss, I didn't do good in your class because my mom, she says she's not good at math either. I'm all, it's not hereditary. We're gonna. So that alone, just how people were okay, just saying it's okay not to be good at math, just alone, just to overcome that. And I may not be the favorite subject, but a lot of times kids have said, you're my favorite class. So that alone has been very helpful to say, okay, well, maybe I'm going to reach out to more kids and make math. It doesn't have to be fun, I say every day, but that we're opening it up, that it's for all. Every student deserves that education, and that we're getting to that place where they all know that they can be able to do it.
Both of you have very interesting stories that have resulted in your being able to see and perceive some of the systemic inequity traps that certain groups of students, more than others, tend to get caught by. Can you, Omar, give us a little tidbit of your life? How did you get to this point that gave you this ability to see?
How much time do we have? But you know what? One of the things that I think truly has been a driving force in my life was just my parents, immigrated to the U.S. and changed their lives for us. And so for them, it was so important for us to take advantage of education here, that no matter what no matter what the situation was, they didn't want us to worry. They just wanted us to do good in school. And so that was one of my big driving forces. But I think just over time, just becoming aware of, as I mentioned earlier, some of these, the circumstances, the situations being against us. And I realized that program I mentioned too, that created that awareness about, the injustices and inequities in education and math, science. But that's what drove me to go to pursue a graduate degree in mathematics. I said, I want to be the one. I want to represent, and I want to be there, and I want to add color to the graduate academia. And so I went to graduate school in mathematics, and when I was there, I got to teach college courses. But on a side project, one of the professors was working with. I went to grad school in Arizona, and one of the professors was doing a project at a middle school in the southern part of the city, which was the not the good part of town. And so she's like, you should come with me. And I said, okay. So I went with her, and she was working with, it was middle school EL students on math.
English learners for those.
Yes, English learners. And so I went with her a few times, and then she's like, I think you should take over, and you should be the one that leads these activities. So plan them and create them for them. Remember, they need to be this, and this, because they're English learners. And so that experience for me was so eye-opening. I was an English learner myself, but I don't think I realized of the challenges. But being there with them and now seeing on the other side what they had to go through, and just to be acknowledged and recognized, it was so impactful for me that at that point, because at that time my intention was, I'm going to be a college professor. But after that experience, I was like, no, I want to go, K through 12, and I want to work with these kids, and these are the kids that are like my parents, like myself. I want to be there for them and support them and guide them in however I can. And so for me, that was one of the most powerful experiences in my educational career that just transformed me as a human.
Isn't that interesting that one experience can change the trajectory of your life?
Yes.
Even though you have many, many aspects to your world, just a pivotal experience. Lisa.
Yeah, and Omar and I have a lot in common as far as some of our experiences too. And I went from high school into a 4-year university, and here I am like, hey, I did good in high school. I knew what I was doing. And I'm different from Omar. Omar went to college knowing he was going to be a math major. So I did not. I love math, but I didn't. That came after many other majors before that I declared. But it's one of those things where I got there, and one of the hardest classes I took in math had to do with proofs, not your geometry proofs, but that would have been nice if my honors geometry teacher required us to write proofs. I got an A in honors geometry in high school, and I never wrote one proof. Yeah. So equitably, that was not something that now in hindsight, I'm thinking that was not fair, because here I am going into a very difficult class that would have been very helpful. They said, well, in geometry, didn't you? I'm all, no, I did not. That's just one example. But going into education, math, being a teacher was always obviously there. Omar and I know we have in common that we always wanted to be astronauts. So maybe we didn't get to be astronauts, Omar, but maybe yet. I did get the application before they canceled the NASA program for teachers. That's how bad I wanted to go up there. But it's one of those things where when the opportunity came up to teach at the high school I graduated from, yes, I took it. So I went and taught at my old high school for the first years of my teaching career, and I stayed in the district for the rest of those 25 years. And it was really insightful to go into a school that I went to, and now here I have the opportunity literally to change what I experienced. And I mean, I went into a classroom where the math book my name was still in the math book. I sat in that desk still. Just the kids didn't believe me, but I showed them like, hey, this is the classroom I was in. So talk about being able to make those changes, like hands-on directly into what I needed to do. I got to do it. I got to be there.
Wow, that. Something tells me you taught proofs to your geometry.
I did. They had to know proofs. They did.
So there's your lived experience has given each of you a perception that not everybody has. So I'm going to ask you. Let's lead with results. I know that you personally have had experiences where your instructional program has produced results that people didn't anticipate. I'm actually not going to start with that. I'm going to start with something. Lisa, you told me once, a long time ago, you said you were an amazing teacher. I mean, nobody worked harder than you. This is my interpretation.
Yes.
That's fair enough. But, I know you were an amazing teacher, and, all the accolades and all the awards and I've seen both of your careers evolve. And you said that sometimes your students wouldn't achieve at the levels that your effort would have corresponded to the level of effort, energy, prep, time that you put into it. And you figured some things out that have shaped what you've decided to do in your career moving forward. Can you speak a little bit to that? I found that fascinating.
So when I was in the classroom, we all think we're doing we do our best, and we all think that, what we're doing is going to show results. and we work really hard at it. But and I was working really hard, but the results weren't showing, whether it was in students being able to perform on some kind of state assessment. It didn't matter what it was, but I was like, they should be able to do better. They really should. And then I realized, or obviously the work that I do, a big part of it is I get to talk about like, well, maybe I need to give the students an opportunity to see and like they need to be aware of what they're going to be asked. Like it's unfair to think that what I'm teaching is enough for that. I need to make sure that I'm using the same vocabulary that they're going to see. I don't want to use something that says, oh, number on the top, number on the bottom. No, numerator, denominator. That's a very simple example, but there's some vocabulary in mathematics that some teachers still use in the classroom, and it doesn't carry over to what students will see on a state assessment, for example.
Or their geometry class in college.
Yeah, exactly. So I need to give my students that equitable basis just for them to be able to have that same language, let alone expose them to, hey, we're going to do, I'm going to teach you how to do this, but I need to make sure I teach them how to do all the parts that they're going to be asked and expected to do. So what are they being held accountable to? I didn't have any kind of thing to compare it to. So later on, of course, now I have things like such as blueprints and IM specifications that I'm able to look at and know that this is what the expectation is for grade level for my students, for the rigor that they should be at. And that awareness of being able to do that, and in my daily work now, get to share that with teachers. So that way I know that the students are going to be in a place where they have the ability to speak to and perform at that level. And as a minimum, like that should at least be for all my students. In a way, my geometry example comes back. That doing a proof was part of the standard. It was not part of what I was taught. So therefore, I lacked in being able to perform and start at an equitable level at my college course. Well, why wouldn't we do that with our own high school students?
You bring to mind in where equity lives. We talk about the question, the fierce question, what's the floor? And hold on. I think people at large think that there is clarity in an education system, no matter where you go to school, no matter what district, what school within a district, what state, that this is what the core information is for a particular subject area, for a particular grade, and everybody's teaching to that. And given that, then when students don't do well in certain neighborhoods and others, then the assumption is, you see, there's something wrong with the students. Right. They're just inherently maybe not as capable or not as motivated, or all the myriad of hypotheses out there that we don't believe. Is it the case that if you're teaching Algebra 1 in one school or another school, or even at the same school, that 3 teachers teaching algebra understand what the level of rigor is that is expected of the next course and the next course and life after high school? Is the floor clearly set across the system?
No, it's not. I think it's there. It's just the interpretation of it is different by every single person, I think, and from school to school, from classroom to classroom. And I think that's a lot of the work that we're trying to do, is to get to make people aware, create that awareness of what is the expectation, and that's defined by many lenses. And so one of those being, the for grade level, the rigor expected by SBAC.
In this state,
blueprints in the state, all of the state, whatever your state is. Any other lenses that you have, the Common Core standards. Hey, our kids are preparing for this calculus course or whatever. Like, we need to make sure that we establish this floor so that we can get them to where they need to be, right? So that they're prepared for all of the options that they will have when they're ending their high school career. So I think that's the beauty of what we're trying to do. And it's not clear. Like a recent partner that we were working with, in one of our first sessions where we were talking about all these lenses, in terms of what the floor should be, even amongst the school teams, different school teams, they were pointing out, for example, this other school, maybe their requirements shouldn't be the same as ours, their floor, because, they live in the really bad part of town. So we know that they're not going to perform. It's expected that they're going to do less. So, they're telling us this. And so the beauty was that finally someone reacted. We didn't have to say anything. Somebody else said, no, but we're creating a floor for everybody. We need to be on the same page. If your kids can go higher, great, but we need to be calibrated on what it means to be at grade level. And so, that's the point of where we're hoping to support, our partners so that we can do that and that it's clear, but it's a struggle when I think we've all come from different experiences and, I learned it this way, I learned it that way. We were so successful over here, but we also have to be aware of, hey, this is where all kids need to be. All kids need to get this level of rigor of, premium education.
So I'm hearing you say that what you have landed upon, given your personal histories and your academic and career experience, is the importance of that the solution, a part of the solution is being very clear about what the level of rigor is that's expected of all students everywhere, no matter where they live, where they go to school, what their circumstance. And I will tell you without a doubt that is absolutely not the case right now.
Right.
And so I see so much money and legislation and energy around teacher preparation and teacher professional learning. And I think, so let's say we take a strategy. Let's if we hear this, if teachers were just better, if they just were better teachers at teaching, achievement would improve. But I say, what is your thought about that when, let's say, you take a very high level math talks? It's a popularized strategy, high level academic vocabulary around the discipline of mathematics in a very structured way, requiring a lot of cognitive. It's awesome. Absent clarity about the content level of rigor that's expected, absent that understanding of the floor, tell me what you would or what you know to be the impact on student achievement of all that energy around teaching strategies, absent a systems definition of the floor. What are your thoughts about that? What has been your experience?
Well, I think if we don't know where we're going, I think that those strategies, they're taking us somewhere, but they're not taking us to a specific location, because if we're not clear on where we're going, then we might be learning something, but it might not be the way that we intend it to be. And I think even myself, before my first few years, I'm going to be very honest, like my first 10 years at my school district, we were able to every teacher taught however they wanted, whatever they wanted. We were not on the same page at all. And no calibration in terms of what it meant, what the grades meant, how deep do we go into this. And so myself, as a math person, there was topics I was extremely passionate about. And just let me put something very simple that I realized later, once the SBAC item specifications came out in California, they outlined little things, just a little thing, such as tools that they can use. So for example, they could use, on a specific standard, they could use a calculator. But I was a math person, and in my undergraduate experience at UC Riverside, we were not allowed to use a calculator at all. So I was like, no, they're going to learn how to do it by hand, everything. And just, so I made it that much more harder than I needed to, for where the purpose at that grade level was. And sometimes it goes the other way, right? Sometimes I teach it, that's not as important. And so I underemphasized what grade level was. And so I think understanding what that is, so that the grade level is, so that we're all on the same page and we know we have to get here, I think that makes the intended outcome of any strategy, whether it's math talks or anything, it gives it a focus and to say, okay, this is the end goal. So by the end of this activity or strategy that we use, students need to be able to do this. So starting with that end in mind is so important. And so that we're all on that same page, because that's how we'll get there.
And Lisa, your teaching experience was primarily at the high school, your personal teaching experience, but you have worked with teachers from kindergarten or TK all the way up. And so my wonder is, what is the implication to high school graduation and to taking math in high school when this floor is a state of mind more than it is a clear ladder starting from the time they start school?
Yes, and it's been really helpful to be able to work with all grade levels. And there's been a lot of finger pointing, like from the high school to the middle school, from the middle school to the elementary. Well, they didn't learn their times tables, multiplication tables, whatever they want to call it. And then even in the high school, they're still pointing fingers. They didn't learn their multiplication tables. Unfortunately, some people take that to heart, and they spend time doing fractions in high school, non-grade level mathematics, and going back and doing the basics. And that's been very difficult, because that floor, I mean, we're teaching grade level mathematics. That's what we should be doing. And without that, they're going to revert back to, or they could revert back to, things that they think the kids may need. Oh, they're lacking in these basic skills. Well, we'll spend the first month of school going over that. Well, guess what? You just lost an entire month of very important instruction time. And that has the implications for that as they continue going. And that, like I said, it doesn't matter which grade level you're at, you're going to point your finger at the grade level below you. I don't know what TK does, but they point at home, right? So those implications, and then by the time we get to high school, then it's almost like they don't have the basics, so they can't do this math. Well, guess what? We have calculators too, and there is some math you could still do without having to know your multiplication tables at a snap of a finger. That's okay. Can they do the mathematics? Please don't let them stop. Don't let them not knowing their times tables know how to do mathematics at grade level. There is a balance, and they could be done. So we see that in our work a lot, and not a lot, but we see it in our work. And when we see it, now we have something to show. We can say, well, this is what the expectation is at this grade level. If you want your kids to be, by the time they get to you, if you're a 5th grade teacher, this is what your 4th grade teachers will have done with them. So expect that, because that's what we're expecting now. And when they get to you, you shouldn't have to do more than a quick review, repeat. We're ready to continue with our grade level instruction.
So my head is firing off, because what I'm seeing in my head is that model that we often use about a school system being an iceberg, where 10% of it is above the waterline. That's achievement, attendance, behavior, and all that. A course progression, but 90% of a school system is really invisible to most people unless you have the perception to be able to see. And so it seems like, shoot, just train the teachers better and students will do better in math. Train the algebra teachers better and they will do better in algebra. And what you're pointing out is, no, that's an obvious. That's an obvious. But the solution to having students do better in algebra is, one, not stopping the algebra train, figuring out the workaround so that you can plug up whatever the holes are as they are continuing their math. And there is a way to do that, but that must be learned. And the other, though, is to prevent kids from ever getting to algebra with those holes. And that requires setting a clear floor each grade level before, which people, I really believe, think is in place, and it's not. I think people will be surprised by the answer of the question I'm going to ask you. If you're both teaching geometry in two different districts in one state, are you teaching the same textbook?
Typically not. Typically
Okay.
not.
So you get the choice. Let me ask you this. And are those textbooks that you select equivalent in scope, sequence, and level of rigor?
No.
Not all the time, no.
And let me go further. Is it possible for within one school district to have schools using different materials that are exposing students to a different level of education? Let me go further. Is it possible to have within one school to have classes with the same title, working from textbooks that expose students to very different levels?
Yes, it's possible.
Yes.
See, that's a systems issue. That's the under the waterline stuff. And is it likely that depending on the community that you're serving, the book that's selected is connected to the expectations people believe in the capacity of students to reach certain levels?
Highly possible.
So, and that's the very bottom of that iceberg is beliefs and expectations. So what I think we're elevating here in this conversation is how we kind of might be missing the mark in the national conversation about mathematics education, which is all about, not all about, but largely about how we fix teachers, how we fix a teacher's classroom instruction, void of the systems that are set up that result in these conditions that in some cases are impossible. I'm going to give you a not on my watch for me in this area. And then I'm going to ask you each for what's been a not on my watch situation that you've experienced and how did you solve it? My not on my watch with mathematics education is going into a school system and seeing that a brand new teacher, only partially having completed her credential work, being given an algebra set of sections with students who have failed algebra 2 times or 3 times or 4 times, all in the same class. Not okay, not on my watch, never, not, none. There's wrong every which way but Sunday. And so what we went in and said, no, first of all, you never cluster students with multiple failures altogether, much less give the least experienced teacher. Of course, the teacher left after that year, or I think midway. Nobody could. And no amount of professional development or professional learning for that teacher was going to solve that. That's a systems issue. So disrupt the master schedule and never have that happen again. What are your not on my watches, each of you?
One of them I can think of is when I was teaching at high school, I was still in the classroom. And I remember I was teaching Algebra 2. We were in our first year implementing curriculum alignment at our school. And my neighbor teacher was also teaching Algebra 2. And let's just say he was not a very nice person. And to the students especially. And so often if the students did not behave, any behavior issue, they were sent out of the room. And so they would right next door, and they would end up peeking into my window, like, can you let me in? And so I would end up bringing them in, and this teacher had a very bad attitude. And so my classes ended up being, 40 some students, and his ended up being 20 some students because he would only accept the kids that were, nice and compliant. So there's a lot of issues there, obviously, with leadership, right, that allowed that to happen. But at that time, I was so hurt because all of the students that were bad students for him were all students of color. And within me, I did speak to him or to this teacher, but I was adamant. I said, no, I'm going to demonstrate to this teacher that these students can do it. And so I created a plan with the kids, and I met with them, and I said, you know what? you can do it, and we're going to do it together. And so when we had like a data reflection session, I made sure I pointed out to this teacher, and I said, these are the students you kicked out. Look how much better they did than your students. And I had to point it out because to him, these students were not teachable. They were bad students. And I wanted to see, I go, it can happen. I go in, and the rest of the year, those kids outperformed. And so all of his. And so and I don't know if it's a good not on my watch moment, but I really wanted to teach this person because this person wouldn't listen. And I wanted to make sure, look, they can. They just need your support to say, hey, believe in them.
Oof.
So I don't know.
Out, and then Lisa. Wow.
And in my case, this was early on in my career, but one thing is if they're my students, I think of them as my responsibility even beyond my classroom. So I really try to sit down and make the opportunity to have that face-to-face with each kid. It's really difficult because in high school, you have sometimes over 100 students plus. But if I can do it in a certain way where I do like 10 a day, that was my goal, especially around grading period time. So sit down, talk about their grade in my class, but also peek. Thankfully, when the computers, you can start to see the grade book for the kid for all their classes. And I see my class, they're doing well, their class. And then there's this one class who because a lot of our kids, they move in kind of pods together in the same classes, but they all had D's and F's in this one particular class. And what's wrong? And so I clicked a little further to see, well, what assignments are showing up and what's going on. And this is before we had grading policies department-wide, where you had to have so many, making sure that you had enough assessments, items to grade by. That was one part. This particular teacher says, oh, I go by points, and I add them up all right before grading period, and then I make it an assignment that's called those like quarter one. Like, no, we can't do that. How do we know how the kids are progressing? And then another one is there's another teacher who had zeros and did not let the kids make it up. And I'm like, didn't you ever take a math class? Because when you average in a zero, you can't recover from that. And so thankfully, I worked in a really great district who even brought in like, okay, this argument against the grade zero. And so that became a part later on, but this is before then. So being an advocate for the students at that time with what I could do is sit with the kid. We're going to write an email to your teacher. But then the action that was also is that the district knew this was a need. Low DF rates, yes, you could say kids are not performing well, but there are some other factors. So especially in mathematics, we can look at our grading practices too. Are we giving students opportunity to be fairly graded and show their knowledge? And if they didn't do well that first time, can they show us and make up for it? Because there is a chance that for a lot of courses, even math courses can go and what is it called again? When they it confirms like that. Validates, that's the word. It validates what they knew before. They even do that with coursework for college credit. So why wouldn't we do that as teachers? So that was a not on my watch, is knowing that kids should have the opportunity to do well in a class, but it shouldn't be at the whim of a grading practice that they mess up in just 1 0.
Yeah. Yes. Sometimes, yeah. If that's not a systemic trap, I don't know what is. And recently there was an article that came out in the National Education magazine about grading. The whole issue was about that, and the research around grade changes and the pressure teachers and administrators are under to change grades in certain communities and not others. So the whole thing about grading being somewhat arbitrary and capricious is a huge topic, but kids live and die in high school on their grades because that determines opportunity for them. Can you each share an example of results? You have many. Whether you as a teacher or you in your education leadership role since you've left the classroom. What has been an example that's near and dear to your heart that demonstrates to you that it's not the kids, that kids by demographic group aren't inherently less capable than others, and that under certain conditions, we can all rise to proofs in geometry? Alisa.
I'll start. Omar and I are both in the unique situation is that the work we get to do now is the work that we experience as teachers, where we are working now with teachers to look at aligning what they do. And first of all, that whole idea of this is what happens in your classroom versus mine. Yes, there's some autonomy and flexibility still there, but we need to agree on what we're going to teach and value and assess together. So that's big part of our work. So being able to do that has been very valuable. And as far as results, I personally got to experience that as a teacher. When in my case, we were teaching what we could with what we had as curriculum, or we made up our own packets because our curriculum we felt wasn't good enough. But what was lacking and why we weren't seeing results is because we were just going onto a website that just spit out 100 problems. Great, then make that a packet and make it a worksheet. That wasn't good enough. That's not the way the kids were going to see it when they took their state assessment. And being able to now have that resource where we could see, oh, this is the way they're going to be asked. Why don't we start asking questions this way? And why don't we make sure that we have common assessments that we can get together and write? We decided on what those standards should be. We decided we're going to do this so many times a year. And then we also decided we're going to write these assessments, but they're going to look like what the students are going to see. That was the big change that we needed to have. And it did make a difference. And the results were talked about for years about how well we did in math after we made that change.
I'll say, and the district you were in continues to be best in class in a working class neighborhood. Amazing. And I'll just underscore, you've said the state assessment twice. It's not that, that whole thing about teaching to the testing. It's that the assessment happens to have a tool which describes every objective, every instructional objective at different levels of difficulty. So I know the work that you do, and what you're doing is saying, by design, not by accident, define the floor to include all these levels of rigor. Some places do it using the AP manuals of instruction that define the level of the SAT manual. It's some third-party objective adjudication of what the level of rigor should be. So I know that's your design, and I will say continues to be among the highest performing districts in the state, with historically lower achieving students and period in general compared to all other students. So awesome. Award-winning teacher, award-winning district.
Oh, thank you. I did leave out one of the best parts of that work that was really important though. And that is our data reflection sessions, where we got together and not only just like, oh, here's the data. Okay, that's good. Your kids did well. No, it went beyond. We looked and see how they did on this one assessment, but we had an opportunity to see how they did on each standard, what the items itself, maybe we didn't write, maybe we made this one too difficult. Maybe this was too easy. Maybe it wasn't aligned with what they were supposed to see. The conversations about best practices were so important. But then even more important was during that same time, we looked at the next assessment and previewed the next one to see this is what the kids are going to be held accountable to, and let's prep them. And it's weird because that was so new at the time. Like, no, we can't, I don't want to teach to the test. I don't want to give them questions like they're going to see on the test. Well, why wouldn't you give them questions similar to what they're going to see? I'm not telling you to give them the exact same questions, but yeah, please share.
I haven't heard people say, I don't hear you say teach to the test. I hear you say, if you know that the SAT defines college eligibility, and you know that the SAT expects this level of proficiency in these subjects, then not to intentionally prepare students for that is unethical. I think about somebody said to me one time, I know that multiplication is on the district exam for third grade, and I'm not going to teach to the test. So I said, you're not going to teach multiplication? In this day and age, assessments should be dipsticking or progress monitoring what the floor is.
Right.
So not to do that, it comes from an old paradigm.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The world it's upside down world.
Yeah. Or even I had to take a driver's test, like the written one. And I studied, and guess what? I had some tests to study from. And would I not have taken that opportunity to do well my first test time around? No, of course not. So, yeah.
There was a time when, assessments measured something completely independent from the curriculum. And if there are any systems where that still is the case, then no, we want to teach what's educationally sound. When they're aligned, however, then not to capitalize on the tools that define the level of rigor is kind of a foolhardy commitment. Bottom line, I'm hearing you say, and I would 1,000% agree, what we're looking for is an objective way to define the level of rigor that students that should define a premium education no matter where you go to school. Yeah, Omar, tell us what are you thinking?
That floor, that the whole time, that's all what it's about. That floor, establishing that floor so that we're all on the same page and we know where we want to get our kids.
And results. Share some little bragging rights here.
This experience was with a teacher that we partnered with, and I met this teacher, and the teacher was very resistant to collaborating and argued with me during data reflection sessions that.
No, Omar.
Yes, because I was pointing out about the performance of their English learners, and specifically when I chatted with him, was like, they can't do it. How are they going to do this and this and this? It's impossible. Like, they barely even speak English. And so I challenged him, and I just said, will you please target at least one? Please choose one and tell me that you're going to just do a little extra something for this student, and tell me what we're going to do. And argued and fought me, and I said, choose one. And I had to tell him, choose one. and finally did. And I said, okay, and let's create a plan. And the teacher just said, okay, what do you want me to do? I was like, let's come up with something together, for this kid. And so we created a plan. And then, next time I was there, like in 2 months later, he walks in early to the session. Oh my God, Omar, guess what? And I was like, that kid is back. He's all performing just like all the other kids. And I even pulled, there's more. And so he started crying in front of me and just telling me, I didn't think he felt so bad that he didn't believe in these kids. And he's like, okay, so today, can we create more plans for kids? He's like, okay, so talk me through it, and let's sit, and we're going to, like, for this kid and this kid, and I'll tell you what they, what I know about them, and so you can help me create a plan for. So we were doing that, and so the next time, again, same thing. There was more increases because now he was being intentional about working with the population versus before he's just all, my students, those don't get it. I go, okay, but we might need to do something different for those. What about these? And so, okay, so next time I was like, can we add in a student with disabilities? Can we add and so he was starting to every time.
Wow.
A little more. And for me, I know that was so minuscule to say in terms of one kid or two kids, but just thinking of the long-term impact of that for those kids, and that knowing that now for however long this guy teaches, now he knows that he can do it and that there's a way that all kids can do it, and so that for me has been a highlight, and I think it's a good metaphor of a lot of the work we're doing with so many of our teachers, because when you see that one little change, especially in their middle school and high school, you'll see they see like almost 200 kids a day, every year. And so that is because I miss working with kids. I miss working with kids. Now we have big kids, right? But the knowing that what we're doing and working with teachers and administrators all over the places, we're taking this statewide, maybe nationwide, I don't know, but fantastic. And it really fills my heart thinking back to, the experience of, my parents coming and, that we're working with those English learners at that middle school, that what we're doing, is making little by little a change, and a positive impact.
And now everybody knows why I admire you both beyond admiration and love you both beyond love. And there you have it. I'm closing with the reflection of the achievement gaps that we have between historically higher performing groups. And it does come in demographic group and historically lower performing groups. And those groups are made up of individual kids, individual students. And so the example you just shared, Omar, and the one that you did as well, Lisa, demonstrate how one student is it's a metaphor for an entire group. It's representative. And so those gaps appear to be there largely by the design of the systems that have been in place. And it requires a certain perception ability, almost different eyeballs. You have to, in some way, have developed this vision to see through beyond the waterline of the iceberg, to see what the things are. And what I don't hear from you is that the solution is to fix a student or to fix a parent or to correct a culture or to blame anybody. I don't hear that. I'm hearing that there's a system at play here, and in mathematics, one of the major deficiencies in the system is the definition of a clear floor that is blind to the population that you're serving.
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yes, right on the dot.
So I thank you so much for this. I think when we advertise that we are going to be having a episode on mathematics education, this is not what people think we'll be talking about. This is not what the conference breakout sessions are generally about. Mm-hmm. And so I thank you for bringing forward some of the less obvious parts of the solution. And final thought from each of you.
Well, Robin, I think I would like to, with just what you were talking about right now with the gaps that you mentioned, I always heard about the gaps. And I think until I started actually seeing data, the sad thing is that no matter what data you see or from wherever state, city, country, you see it on the graph. So I challenge everybody out there to find your local data and graph it. Ooh. The gaps, they exist, they're real. And whether you separate it by, different student subgroups, by different, different student groups, by different levels, by different ethnicities, those gaps exist. And so I challenge everyone to see, it's like, what can you do to get all of those lines, graphs to, come together to what we call, that X marks the spot, right? Where they all intersect. So.
Wow, that's what a beautiful challenge to our audience. Thank you, Omar and Lisa. Final thought.
I love, Robin, talking to you today because it almost feels like we had this idea of like, oh, we're going to talk about math, but really you did such a great job of getting us to, yes, there's a lot of things in math instruction that are important. A lot of times it's teachers need to teach better. It's about the instruction. But what we focused on today was systems work. And that's doable. Like you can put a system in, and regardless of the instruction, at least you have that. And yes, you're going to have a lot of personalities as teachers and what they do and when they're in their own classrooms. Yes. But guess what? We're all being held accountable to the same things. And what's so bad about that? And that systems work is going to allow us to have a point where we're all going to be able to give these students that opportunity. And like Omar said, to get to narrowing those gaps and closing them. And yes, as much as I believe our instructions is important and how we instruct, that's for another podcast. And today we brought out that the systems behind it under the waterline, like you mentioned, the iceberg, is equally as important, if not even sometimes more so, because we can control this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing your time, expertise, and absolute joy for our life's work. With everybody here, we invite our audience to participate in the conversation and to share your wisdom, your experience with us. It'll all be collected as part of our crowdsourced research project, and we will be forthcoming with a publication that summarizes our themes and our learnings. So once again, thank you, Omar. Thank you, Lisa. And may your light continue to shine as you go through and ensure that every student receives the premium education that they all deserve. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. It's an honor to be here with both of you. So you guys are very inspirational, and so I'm just glad to be in my camera. At least you guys are. I'm right in between you guys, so I'm the lucky guy.
Bye bye.
Shattering inequities requires more than conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future of education together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for all students. Thanks for listening.